Welcome back to Story Sprout, the place where ordinary acts of kindness turn into extraordinary stories that will leave you speechless. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe and join our growing family because you never know when the smallest good deed might come back around in the most unexpected way. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a chilly autumn morning in a quiet little town. The kind of town where everybody knew each other's names, where neighbors waved as they passed by, and where the local coffee shop was always filled with laughter. In the heart of this town was a modest garage owned by a hard-working young woman named Claire. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, but she was known for one thing, her honesty and her heart. Claire's garage wasn't fancy. The walls were lined with rusty tools, the air always smelled faintly of gasoline, and the sound of clinking wrenches echoed throughout the day. But what made it special was Claire herself. She believed that every person who walked through her doors deserved kindness, whether they could pay or not. One cold afternoon, as the golden sun began to dip behind the horizon, an old pickup truck rattled into her lot. The truck barely moved, coughing and sputtering as though it was on its last breath. Behind the wheel was a man who looked worn by life. His clothes were old, his beard unshaven, and his eyes carried the weight of untold stories. Claire wiped the grease from her hands and walked over. "Hey there, looks like your truck's having a rough day," she said gently. The man nodded, his voice low. "Yeah, it's been giving me trouble for months. I don't have much left to put into it. I'm just trying to keep it going so I can get around." Claire studied him for a moment. She noticed the military patches sewn onto his tattered jacket, the dog tags that dangled loosely around his neck. He was a veteran. A man who had once served his country but now seemed forgotten by it. Something inside her stirred. Without asking about money, without hesitation, she said, "Don't worry. Leave it with me. I'll see what I can do." The man looked surprised. "I can't afford much. I don't even know if I can pay you anything right now." Claire smiled. "Then consider it a favor. Sometimes trucks need saving, and sometimes people do too." Over the next 2 days, Claire poured her time, energy, and heart into that old pickup. She replaced the failing transmission parts, tightened the brakes, changed the oil, and even patched up the bodywork. Every night she worked late, with only the hum of her tools and the sound of crickets outside keeping her company. When the veteran returned, his eyes widened in disbelief. The truck, once a hopeless wreck, now looked almost new. Claire handed him the keys with a grin. "She's ready to roll again." The man's hands trembled as he held the keys. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his voice broke. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't even know me. Why would you do this?" Claire shrugged softly. "Because sometimes we all need a little help. You served for us. This is the least I could do for you." He stood there silently for a moment before saluting her. "My name is Thomas. I'll never forget this." Days passed, and life in the little town went back to normal, or so it seemed. Claire continued working on cars, never expecting anything in return for what she had done. To her, it was just another act of kindness, nothing extraordinary. But what she didn't know was that the wheels of fate were already turning. One crisp morning, as she unlocked her garage, a distant rumble filled the air. At first, she thought it was thunder, but then the sound grew louder, closer, sharper. The ground trembled beneath her feet. She looked up into the clear blue sky, and her jaw dropped. A massive Navy helicopter was descending right above her garage. Its blades sliced through the air, creating a whirlwind of dust and leaves. The townspeople gathered around, shielding their eyes, whispering in shock. What could a Navy helicopter possibly be doing in their small town? As the aircraft landed, the noise thundered across the lot. The side door slid open, and out stepped several uniformed officers, their medals glinting in the sunlight. And there, among them, was Thomas, the very same man whose truck she had repaired just days ago. Claire's heart pounded as Thomas approached with a proud smile. "Claire," he said loudly over the roar of the helicopter, "you thought you were just fixing a truck. But what you really did was restore a man's dignity. You reminded me that kindness still exists in this world." Behind him, one of the officers stepped forward and saluted Claire. "This man is a decorated veteran. He served his country with honor but fell on hard times. When you helped him, you didn't just repair his truck, you repaired his faith in humanity. And for that, the Navy would like to honor you." Claire stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sight. The officers presented her with a plaque of recognition, engraved with her name. The crowd cheered, the helicopter roared, and tears streamed down her face. She had never expected anything like this. All she had wanted was to help. Thomas clasped her hand tightly. When I left the service, I felt invisible. Forgotten. But you saw me. You gave me hope again. And now I want the world to see what a small-town mechanic can do with nothing but kindness. In that moment, Claire realized something powerful. One act of compassion, no matter how small it may seem, can ripple across lives in ways we can't imagine. What started as fixing a broken truck ended with a Navy helicopter landing in her backyard, and more importantly, with a man's spirit being lifted once again. As the helicopter took off, carrying the officers back into the sky, Claire stood there with the townspeople cheering around her. She wasn't a hero in her own eyes. She was just Claire, a mechanic with grease on her hands and a heart that believed in doing what was right. But that day, she understood something. True heroes are often found in the quietest corners, doing the simplest of things. And so, whenever you feel like your actions don't matter, remember Claire's story. Sometimes, a single act of kindness can change everything, not just for the person receiving it, but for the entire world watching. Thank you for joining us on Story Sprout today. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, the smallest good deed can spark the biggest miracles.